Garland Favorito is Mr. Election Integrity in Georgia, maybe even in the United States. He's been pursuing elections integrity since 2006 when he co-founded Georgia Voter, or VoterGA. And he's also my friend. Garland, welcome back to The Truth.
Great to be back with you, John. It's been a while.
I don't know whether you drink or not, do you?
I think Raffensperger has led me to drinking over the last few years, but no, not much.
Well, I'm just wondering if you're hungover from celebrating the demise of Brad Raffensperger.
Well, it wasn't just Brad Raffensperger, but also going along with him was
Gabriel Sterling.
Gabriel Sterling and Attorney General Chris Carr.
I was getting around to that one.
The trifecta of election corruption here in Georgia. So I think the future looks pretty bright for us right now, but there's still an uphill battle.
Well, I think you get to take a lot of the credit for having been in the trenches for a long time. You were doing election integrity before most people even considered the concept. I mean, I always had suspicions about Georgia's elections, but never any hard proof until the 2020 election. And then I actually started looking, and I was both shocked and hugely disappointed with what I found, as you're well aware. So what's next for Raffensperger? Is he finished politically, as I hope that he is?
I would certainly think so. David Becker will probably find something for him to do, but I don't think he has a political future. He's one of the
Now, who is David Becker when you say David Becker will find?
Well, David Becker is the Soros-funded, he was the head of, well, he's now the head of CEIR, Center for Election Innovation Research, also was the head of ERIC, Electronic Registration Information Center. That's the organization to which Raffensperger has outsourced all the personal identifying information of all the voters and drivers in Georgia, and without our knowledge and without really any legal authority to do so.
What do you, I mean, it's hard. I mean, it's just speculation. I realize that unless you have some direct evidence. But what do you think is really driving Raffensperger? I mean, he seems like the chief creep to me. He was on the phone with President Trump in 2020. President Trump said, you know, the margin is so narrow, all you really have to do is find 11,778 votes. And he and the media completely flipped that and said that Trump had asked him to rig the election. What a complete and utter farce. The person who fixed the election is accusing someone else of trying to fix the election. It just, you know, I mean, I'm just wired to have a real negative reaction when people lie. And I've considered Raffensperger to be a untrustworthy person.
Well, we have a study where we pointed out 42 different discrepancies or false information that he gave the members of Congress and the General Assembly in that 10-page letter he wrote back on January 6th of 2021. 42 different points that we refuted, which were in a letter. That's an average of 4.2 points per page of deceptiveness. So, yeah, it's really, it's inexplicable. They say that the things that drive most politicians are power and money. So I would start with those two things and see where they go.
So you've got Tim Fleming and Vernon Jones, as I understand it, in a runoff for the Secretary of State. Is that right?
Right.
I should, but I don't know Tim Fleming. I don't know where, is he a state senator?
Tim is a state representative. He chaired the House Election Study Committee that operated mostly during the summer of this year after the session was over. And he is from Covington, Georgia.
Well, studying the election this summer, that sounds a little too late to me. I mean, this has been raging since 2020. We've been wallowing in this mess for 6 years.
Yeah, well, the Speaker of the House set up that committee after the session was over. There wasn't enough that got done, so they set up the committee. The committee made a recommendation that we supported, but ultimately nothing was passed in this last session, even though we have had really good years in getting election integrity things passed in 21 and 24. But this year was pretty dry.
Well, so do you have a favorite between Fleming and Vernon Jones?
Well, we're a nonpartisan organization, so we can't take sides in elections.
Well, you're talking to your old buddy here. You can just tell me what your personal leanings are.
I'm on. We're on a live show, so we can't really. I can't.
Well, what would you say are the defining criteria that you would identify for the next Secretary of State of Georgia? I mean, I travel a fair bit. Virtually everywhere I go, and someone will ask me where are you from, and I'll say I raised my family and did my career in Atlanta, and invariably the response is, "Oh, Georgia's a mess."
Yeah.
Is it possible to get the ship righted?
I think, John, to be honest with you, it's going to have to come from the top. And both Vernon and Tim have been somewhat helpful to us in the election integrity space. But I think that this is going to have to come from the top, and it is going to have to come from the new governor who takes over in January. That's where we're going to be able to solve this problem, depending upon who's elected.
So that new governor is going to be Burt Jones, Rick Jackson, or Keisha Lance Bottoms. Now, I happen to know two of the three, and I like Keisha Lance Bottoms personally, but I would not vote for her for dog catcher because she was very instrumental in the failed Biden administration. She worked in the executive branch and bills herself as one of the president's chief advisors. Well, I would be whiting that out on my resume, not putting it in neon lights. So, any insight on the Republican candidates for governor?
Well, yeah, John, I can tell you that everything that has gotten passed, and we actually have a pretty good track record, even though we came up dry in the last session, Georgia is number one in terms of election integrity improvement since 2020, hands down. And a lot of that, all the bills were initiated from the Senate. And the Senate has been under the leadership of Burt Jones for the last several years. And so we have gotten done. He has a good track record of getting stuff done for us. And we are going to release an election integrity scorecard on Tuesday that will outline some of the things that we have gotten passed, because a lot of people have forgotten all the things that have been passed by this General Assembly. Things like banning of outdoor drop boxes, banning of private money, making ballots and ballot images public record. All those types of things have been achieved. And there's quite a list. There's actually 30 different accomplishments that they have made. So it's quite amazing.
So do you feel, is it your sense that we had a fair and honest election last week in Georgia?
Well, it looked to me to be pretty clean, despite the fact that the the election was still run out of the secret bunker. At least the aggregation of the results. There's a lawsuit right now to prevent that. But I would say that everything looked pretty good. However, we had massive problems with the no-ink poll books, particularly in Cobb County. And they are all sorts of problems, not pulling up the voter, not pulling up the correct ballot, not thinking properly. And we're still looking into all those problems to try to figure out what on earth happened.
Well, it almost feels to me that the people that we talked about earlier, Raffensperger, Sterling, and Carr, basically just said to us that we're going to cheat and there's nothing you can do about it. That's the way it came over. That's my interpretation. That's the way they came across to me. I mean, saying that you're going to aggregate the votes in a secret bunker that even the state elections board could not observe just seems to be as arrogant as it is illegal. I mean, what do you make of that?
Well, it's unbelievable, John, because it's also direct violation of Georgia law. OCGA 212406 says that all election officials must perform all of their duties in public. So it's just a complete disregard for the law by Raffensperger, and Chris Carr is allowing him to get away with it. So it's just unbelievable.
Well, so people came forward, filed an action in Fulton Superior Court, I believe. Is that right? To asking for an injunction to.
That's right. And you have to file in the court in Fulton County if you're going to sue the government and sue Raffensperger.
Okay, we back?
Yeah, that was our internet.
All right. So the judge in that case, who was the judge or is the judge?
Well, the judge was supposed to be Melanie Leffridge, but she was not available, although she was supposed to be for an election day. So the Chief Judge Glanville made the decision to grant the TRO, and then turned around about a few hours later and rescinded the decision. The temporary order would have allowed observers in that bunker area where the results are aggregated, verified, and reported by Raffensperger.
So who got to him?
The fingerprints seem to be the governor. I don't know. Unfortunately, this whole thing is supported by Chris Carr, who's the Attorney General. He's not standing up to enforce the law either.
Did the Attorney General's office appear on behalf of the Secretary of State?
Well, Mr. Anulowitz appeared, and I believe he had been retained by the Attorney General. I have to check to make sure, because the Attorney General is responsible for defending the Secretary of State, as you know. So,
I am not convinced that that is correct. Article 2 of the Georgia Constitution says that all officers of the state are to serve the people. Nowhere can I find that the Attorney General is beholden to the state officers. And in fact, I had that conversation with the former Georgia Attorney General, Mike, he who am I trying to remember, Garland?
Michael Bowers.
Mike Bowers. I had that conversation with him a number of years ago, and he validated and actually informed me of what I'm just saying. And in fact, when he was Attorney General, he sued the governor on behalf of the state twice. So saying that the Attorney General has to represent the state officers is just not true. Yet that is the refrain that we're fed. But what if what happens when the officer commits a blatant crime or a violation of his duty? Are we to believe that the Attorney General is going to defend him? I don't think so.
Well, in addition, to add to your point, John, the Georgia law requires the Attorney General to uphold the laws, and it gives a very explicit power to do that. So that kind of adds to your point. It's not only a constitutional thing, but it's also a legal thing, which Chris Carr just refuses to do.
Well, it's very alarming to me that the conduct of the people that we elect who take an oath to protect the citizens of the state based on the Constitution and the laws seem to do just the opposite. And I agree with your sense that the election was fair. I did not see any anomalies just jumping off the page other than aggregating the votes in the bunker. I really did stop and consciously think the fix is in. We're going to end up with results that no one expected, that don't comport with logic. But as it turned out, I'm not seeing that. In fact, I'm seeing basically just the opposite of that. People that I thought would if they were going to steal an election, that they would rig it somehow. But I personally, and I'm not there like you are, looking at it minute by minute, but my general impressions were that it seemed like a fair election to me.
Yeah, I think there were one or two surprises, but nothing that would generate a massive amount of suspicion. We just had these serious issues with the poll books. We've got to figure out what happened there.
Well, it just seems like the mess does continue, though. The State Elections Board has tried to assert itself and try and make a difference in Georgia elections, but they seem to be thrown roadblocks in their way. As we said, most recently being denied access to oversee the aggregation of the votes. What would motivate the Secretary of State to pick that kind of a fight? I mean, no one would have criticized him if he had allowed the Elections Board access to viewing the aggregation, or the press, or members of the Republican and Democratic parties. I don't think there's a soul on earth that would have been critical of him for if he were to have done that, which I believe that he was required to do under state law. I mean, I don't think it's just limited to the State Elections Board. I think there should have been representatives from the media and both parties present.
Right, and there's limited space, I would imagine, in the Emergency Operations Center. And that.
Well, how convenient! Why not do it in Brad Raffensperger's closet in the confines of his home then? And then there wouldn't be space for anybody except him and Gabriel Sterling.
Right, but to your point, at a minimum, the Democratic Party and Republican representatives should have been available. We tried to get some credentialed poll watchers in there, and you could even put a camera in there
yes.
and televise what's going on, or you could just simply move it out of the bunker. There's no reason for aggregation and statewide reporting to be done in a secret bunker. 159 counties all aggregate their results from precincts, and not one of them that I know of uses a secret bunker to do that.
Are there any openings on the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeals right now?
I think they were all filled in the election.
Well, I just wonder if somebody's going to retire before the end of Kemp's term, and we'll find Judge Granville being the new nominee or the new governor's appointment. That seems to have been the pattern in the past, like with the head of the GBI who refused to look into the 2020 election because he was going to be a team player, ends up with an appointment for life as a Superior Court judge in Cobb County.
Yeah.
How convenient.
Well, and you will remember well that since you were involved at the time, the case where the appeals court upheld the lower court ruling that we had no standing in the Fulton County counterfeit ballot case. Once that ruling was made, the justice who we think actually wrote the decision, Justice Pinson, was promoted to the Georgia Supreme Court immediately after that, within 30 days after making that decision against us.
And he was appointed to the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court?
He was in the Court of Appeals and now sits on the Georgia Supreme Court.
I see. He wrote the decision while on the Court of Appeals. Yeah. Well, I thought that the Supreme Court reversed that Court of Appeals decision unanimously. Have I got that wrong? Was it not unanimous?
They did. You were absolutely right. But he had to recuse himself because
because he had written the decision. That makes sense, of course.
Yes, or at least he was involved in the decision. If he didn't write it, he was involved in the decision, and therefore he had to recuse. And you're right, it was unanimous. And as you know, we didn't even have a hearing. I was kind of looking forward to going to the Georgia Supreme Court for a hearing because I thought we were going to win that. But we didn't even get to go have a hearing. They said it was such a no-brainer.
Yes.
They made it unanimously without a hearing.
Well, and that is within the Supreme Court's purview to deny oral arguments when they consider that there would be nothing to be gained by having oral arguments. So, I mean, I'm just thankful that the Supreme Court is there and can provide some checks and balances. They seem like the venue that you can get a fair decision out of. Certainly not the Court of Appeals and the Fulton County Courthouse. My God, what a snake pit.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm sorry, Garland, you're such a nice guy and everybody likes you. I don't really mince words, and that's no criticism of you. I probably would maybe have been a better politician if I would be more diplomatic. I just call them as I see them. And Judge McBurney, who had your case in his courtroom, wrote the most biased opinion I've ever read since I joined the bar in 1979 against David Perdue, and said that he is not going to take advantage of this court. And that was the decision that the Supreme Court reversed. But then when the case came back, Judge Amaro recused himself. I still don't know what that was about. Why would the judge recuse himself from a case that he had made rulings in, and he had for 9 months? But then it went back to McBurney, who obviously was hugely biased.
Well, technically, he just transferred the case to McBurney. He didn't actually recuse himself, but he shouldn't have. If he wanted to get rid of the case, if he didn't want to keep it, then he should have sent it back to the original judge, Judge Rachel Consale, or to the chief judge. We now know that Judge McBurney contacted Judge Amaro ahead of time before he got the case back and arranged to receive the case, which is unbelievable that he would do that. As you know, we filed a motion to recuse McBurney immediately because of the David Perdue ruling that you mentioned. And also he did this bizarre release of grand jury excerpts from the Fani Willis investigation, which poisoned the well, or apparently was trying to poison the well of public opinion, not only in Georgia, but throughout the country.
Yes.
So a clear extreme bias, and ironically, it was Judge Melanie Lethbridge who said that he could stay on the case, that it wasn't our motion to recuse wasn't adequate.
Well, I'm speechless. I am just really speechless that these judges are not following the laws and are not following, it doesn't appear to me, the rules of ethics. I mean, what right does Judge McBurney in Fulton County have to call up a judge in Henry County who got the case because all of the Fulton County judges did originally recuse themselves? So why was it okay for them to recuse themselves in Fulton because of a perceived conflict of interest vis-a-vis the elections board? They all show up in the same building for work every day, or they get their paycheck from the same place. But then it's okay for McBurney to take the case 3 years later. That doesn't track.
Yeah, it was originally perceived by the chief judge as an election case, and he sent it over to Judge Amaro in Henry County. And we didn't dispute that, even though it wasn't an election case. It was an equal protection due process case. But we felt good about being in Judge Amaro's courtroom. And as you know, he was ruled in our favor multiple times before he suddenly decided that we had no standing after Fulton County hired criminal defense attorneys just to prevent us from looking at the ballots.
So the FBI has the ballots. What do you think is going to happen?
I think there's going to be indictments.
Do you think that they preserved the ballots and that what the FBI picked up were actually the ballots from 2020 in entirety?
I do believe that they were preserved. I think they have them in their entirety, but they don't have enough to match the results that they reported. And therein lies the catch, and that's why they have been fighting this so hard for so many years.
So who do you think is going to go down? Who are your prime suspects?
I couldn't speculate about anything like that. But I mean, the only thing I could say is that, the cover-up was maybe even worse than the crime.
Yeah, for sure.
This has been an unbelievable and massive cover-up just to prevent the truth from being known to the Georgia voters and really all the rest of America.
Well, for me, this constitutes a breach of a red line. I mean, my forefathers, yours, and our listeners, many of them paid the ultimate price to establish this country in 1776, which we're about to celebrate in another month. People gave their lives, they fought, they left their families, their homes, so that we could establish a free country with freedoms like freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to own a gun, and perhaps most importantly, the freedom to choose our elected officials. And the people that did this in 2020, and God knows when else, overtly deprived us of our franchise. And my belief is if you take our franchise, you take our country. And that should not be lightly considered or allowed to occur without serious repercussions. Ergo, I want some damn accountability. Now, where is the Favorito case that was now most recently in McBurney's court?
They are both in the Court of Appeals. Our case, as well as Caroline Jeffords' case, are sitting in the Court of Appeals right now. We have filed our appeal. I think we're waiting on Fulton County's reply.
Well, so what was the appeal on the basis of? I'm just haven't been aware of any rulings from. Was it in McBurney's court that a decision from him that is being appealed?
McBurney sat on the case for a year after getting it. And then a week after the FBI executed its search warrant, he suddenly decided that our case was not valid and that we should pay attorney's fees to Fulton County. And this is where it gets really funny. First of all, he says that we didn't plead future claims. We actually pled 30 times future claims in our briefs, and 15 in the most active one. Caroline also had probably another, she even had more. I mean, she might have had as many as 60 or so. So that was completely false. It was completely conflicting with the actual documents that are in his court. And that was one major area where it was false. He claimed that we had no justiciable issue. And that's crazy as well, because again, as you know, or you were involved in this, we had 7 favorable rulings from the courts, 5 from Judge Amero, plus a victory in the Georgia Supreme Court and a victory remand back from the Court of Appeals to him. 7 different issues decided in our favor. And he claimed that therefore there was no justiciable issue. That's kind of crazy. And there was that. And then he said, well, we'd have to pay attorney's fees. Why would you pay attorney's fees if you won the case in the Georgia Supreme Court? It's crazy, but we can go through it a little bit more detail. But the bottom line is, if you read our brief, we found 7, I think it was 6 or 7 different unprecedented rulings, as far as we know, in the history of the Georgia judicial system, to try to claim that we would have fees. So, or should be obligated to pay fees. It's just, it was absurd. And I feel sure that we'll get that overturned. But then we have to also win this on appeal.
Well, so you're going to get it overturned from what venue? By the Court of Appeals?
I think that the Court of Appeals will overturn McBurney.
Yeah,
he gets overturned quite often.
So you kind of wonder if McBurney has got Judge Boasberg on speed dial. This is the sort of arrogance that these activist judges appear to engage in. I mean, I'm wondering if McBurney is being looked at by the FBI. I mean, who is he talking to? How is he coming up with this nonsense? Where does he get the arrogance to go against the Georgia Supreme Court and, as you say, completely ignore a fellow Superior Court judge's rulings, which would call into question McBurney's rulings in the case?
Well, he ignored dozens of precedents that have been established over decades in trying to claim that we should pay attorney's fees. There's just so many things wrong with that, and we cite one after the other. It goes on and on. I mean, nobody.
That feels like threat and intimidation to me, because the standard in Georgia, I believe, is stubborn litigiousness. And you cannot be stubbornly litigious, as you point out, when you've already received favorable rulings from another Superior Court judge, which were basically affirmed by the Supreme Court of the state. And so it does feel like bullying to me, for lack of a better word. And I just don't understand where this judge thinks, where he gets off. How does he not care that he is going to be held in contempt, not legally, but in the court of public opinion by the public for his absurd rulings, which seem to be, to me, undermining our system of government?
I would have to agree with you there, John. I think it does undermine our system of government rulings that had no basis in facts of the case.
Well, I hope the FBI will look closely at him and maybe McAfee too. I mean, McAfee made favorable rulings for his former boss, Fonnie Willis, when she was in his courtroom, and I've always felt that something happened with Amero. You know, I've traveled down to Henry County on more than one occasion and sat in the courtroom and observed him. I also got firsthand accounts from people that were involved in the case that Amero seemed to be very concerned about what he had learned, that he actually came to the English Avenue warehouse, English Street warehouse, where he personally observed the absentee ballots and the evidence from the 2020 election, ordered that they be preserved, and also ordered that a Fulton County sheriff stand guard outside the warehouse for a large number of weeks and months to make sure that nothing happened to those ballots. And then one day, was it in August or September of that year, I think, that we went to his courtroom, and it looked like we were watching an outer body experience, because he completely changed his demeanor. His whole personality seemed to be different. He seemed to be hostile towards your lawyer, and it was just bizarro. I called up Bob Shealy afterwards. Bob was in federal court in Augusta, and the judge in that case would not allow him to have a leave of absence for a day so that he could go and appear before Amero. And I told him, I said, Bob, something's going on. I said, this guy has completely changed his colors, and I'm worried about this case. And Bob, being the kind of easygoing, all shucks guy he is, said, oh, we'll get it straightened out. And damned if 10 days later, Amero out of left field throws the case out of court on the basis of standing, which had been argued 9 months before, as would happen in any case.
Right.
Venue and standing are the first two things that are resolved. In fairness to Amero, I don't believe he ever explicitly ruled on standing, but he permitted the case to go forward, which was certainly an implicit ruling that the petitioners had standing. So it just all felt very uncomfortable to me, and that's an understatement to characterize it that way. It seemed rigged. The election, we know, was rigged, and there appeared to be a cover-up. There's the word I'm looking for. There appeared to be a coordinated cover-up, and I want the FBI to investigate it and not stop at anybody. Go all the way up the chain. Who did they talk to? Who did they email? Who did they text with? Get their phones, get their signal chats, whatever. Let's bust this thing wide open and find out the truth so we can have a free, fair country governed by the rule of law and the Constitution, which we will celebrate in another month.
Yeah, in fact, I was up there celebrating the rededication of America this past weekend.
Good for you.
But the standing, is just it's a joke. It is a vehicle that judges use to dismiss cases that are too much hot potatoes they don't want to touch.
I don't think it's a hot potato, Garland. It's our country.
Right.
That so marginalizes the issue to say, oh, it's a hot potato and the judge doesn't have a bear. Well, it's more than that, because the judge was traveling down the track to do the right thing and then just completely reversed himself.
Yeah.
And McBurney is showing all different colors. He seems like, he's, was Burt Jones in his courtroom with Fonnie Willis? Or did McAfee have that?
No, I don't believe he was in the courtroom, no.
I don't know whose court Burt was in when he pointed out Fonnie Willis's conflict of interest because she had donated money to Bert's opponent, and then she was trying to interfere with his election as for lieutenant governor. Yeah. And whoever that judge was correctly ruled and said, no, you can't give money to his opponent and then try and derail his campaign for lieutenant governor. So
I think that was McBurney, actually.
I think it was McBurney. I do. So, you know, and then when then he had harsh words for Fonnie Willis within the last several months. I can't remember exactly what the issue was that he was ruling on, but I felt like, well, maybe the judge is coming around. But then this case, this what you're saying, it just blows my mind. It's like he's flicking off the Georgia Supreme Court and the rule of law and precedent, and it's bewildering to me. I think it's bad enough that it needs to be looked at. That's what I'm saying.
His harsh words were, I think, he called out the conflict of interest that she had with Burt Jones because she had held a fundraiser for Charlie Bailey, who was running for lieutenant governor against her.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to.
But
I'm saying in the last couple of months, or maybe in 2026, I read that McBurney had issued some sort of a rebuke on Fonnie Willis, and I don't remember what the subject was.
Well, I think that's pretty harsh. I think that was the lieutenant governor's, her attempting to prosecute the lieutenant governor along with the 18 other political adversaries she already indicted, which, by the way, after she went to the Fulton County Commission in November and asked for $5 million a year to reduce the murder case backlog in Fulton County. Then she turned around and used that money to start the investigations that resulted in the indictment of 18 of her political adversaries. And then, as you know, after she was booted off the case for conflict and Nathan Wade as well, her boyfriend, then the prosecuting attorney's council comes in and decides that there's not one of those 41 counts that she had were actually prosecutable. So this is the greatest prosecutorial misconduct case, I believe, in American history.
Horrendous. And you know, it's clear that she and Nathan Wade were coordinating with the Biden White House. And the question I continue to ask is, why is she still a sitting district attorney? Where is the Georgia Bar? Where is the Judicial Qualifications Committee? Where is the governor? I mean, come on.
What? She should have been impeached. Where's the legislature?
100%. 100%. Well, I'm glad you went to Washington last week. I would imagine that was a really inspirational experience. In just a couple of minutes, let's recap that. Tell us about you and Tamara. I'm sure was by your side.
Yeah, if she was here, she could do a better job of this than me. But it was truly amazing. They had a lot of worship bands. Hillsong did a complete medley. Chris Tomlin closed us out. There was a Liberty praise and worship band. Then they had all these amazing speakers. I wish I can't remember them all. Eric Metaxas, Lou Ingalls, Franklin Graham, Jack Graham, Sissy Graham. There was the Bishop Barron, Robert Barron, I believe, was there, and then it was kind of highlighted by a prayer where we literally got down on our knees and rededicated America to God, and then Speaker Mike Johnson closed us out with a prayer of rededication. And along the way, we got videos from President Trump, Tulsi Gabbard, and J.D. Vance all along the way. It was quite an amazing.
So where was the convention held?
It was on the mall. It was outdoors on the mall.
And how many people?
Hundreds of thousands, and they had grossly underestimated how many people would come on that such a short notice to rededicate America. And they had probably needed 2 or 3 times the amount of space they had allocated for that event. But it was quite an amazing event. I was blessed because we ended up on the 4th row thanks to Tamara's connections.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, I'm glad you were able to have that experience. And I do firmly believe that that's the only hope that we've got to save this country. We were founded on Judeo-Christian values, and every member of that signed the Declaration of Independence was believed in God. And that was, even though that we explicitly have a notion of separation of church and state, church underlies our core beliefs. And I think to get this country back on the right track, that's what needs to happen. And it sounds like you and Tamara were part of an effort to start that ball rolling. And I hope that it collects speed and momentum, and that and the good news is that millennials are returning to church in record numbers. So I think there is hope. I think there are reasons for optimism. And thanks to people like you and Tamara, Garland, we're all in your debt for the 20 years that you have spent on helping ensure free, fair elections. That is not trivial. That is, and you haven't done it on the weekends. You've done it. You've been all in. And you've spent no telling how many tens of thousands of hours. And so thank you for your good work. Keep fighting. And
Well,
please come back soon and often and keep us posted on how you're doing.
Thank you, John. And we are an all volunteer organization. As you know, Tamara and I are retired. She's semi-retired. And we do this full time. We've been doing it full time for the last 7 years.
So where can people follow you? How can they keep up with you?
VoterGA.org. We have got all the legal documents out there, press conferences to look at, and all sorts of things, press releases about the things we discussed today. They're all on the VoterGA.org tab. And if you can see to make a donation, that is also tax deductible. We are 501c3. So, John, but thank you so much. We can't do what we do without people like you who are willing to get the news out and spread it so that the people learn the truth, because the truth is stranger than fiction.
Yeah, and this is really strange, and I never thought we'd see it in this country, but evidently it's been ongoing for longer than we realized, and I hope it's going to get stopped in its tracks, and most importantly, that the people that have done it are held accountable. That's what I want. I think that's what our listeners want. I think we're approaching the point where people of America are going to demand it. And I've just got the sense that between now and the midterm elections, that a lot of revelations are going to be coming out. And personally, I can't wait.
I think you're absolutely right.
Well, that is the truth. And I'm John Gordon. Thank you, Garland Favorito. Have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you, John.